Before the wind ever knocked on her door, Silver Ridge had already decided who Minerva Hartwell was. A woman shaped by loss, bent by whispers, standing upright only because she refused to fall. And on that October night, with the lamps burning low and the ledger open beneath her hands, fate began pressing closer than the walls could hold. The wind shoved hard against the old trading post on Merchant Street, rattling its bones like it meant to tear the place loose from the ground and scatter it across the valley. Inside, Minerva Hartwell sat hunched over her father's ledger, shoulders stiff, fingers numb, eyes burning from hours of numbers that refused to settle into sense. The oil lamps cast a soft amber glow over the counter and shelves, but warmth couldn't ease the ache knotted deep in her back or the dull pounding at her temples. She was only 32, yet the town of Silver Ridge whispered she looked older, worn thin, used up. A woman promised a future and handed nothing but grief instead. Outside, the October wind scraped along the clapboard walls and clawed at the windows. Inside, her life felt just as fragile, just as close to breaking. She rubbed her temples and forced herself to refocus on the accounts. But the voices of the town crowded her thoughts. Uninvited and cruel, barren, cursed. Poor woman. Her fingers drifted to the thin gold band still circling her left ring finger. She had worn it far longer than she had worn the marriage itself. Thomas Hartwell had promised her children love, a home alive with laughter. Instead, she had counted 3 long years of silent months, waiting for life that never came. Then one morning he left without a word, took half their savings, and carried off the last scraps of hope she'd been clinging to. She never removed the ring. Taking it off felt like admitting something was wrong with her, that she was broken beyond repair. The door chimed sharply, snapping her back. Councilman Bramwell Mortimer stepped inside, filling the room with the heavy confidence of a man who believed the world needed his guidance. His silver chain swung across his broad belly as he approached the counter. "Miss Hartwell," he said. She lifted her chin and nodded politely. "Councilman." He removed his hat slowly, the way men did when they wanted women to think they were being respectful. "I've spoken with several business owners," he said. "We're concerned about you." Her jaw tightened. "I'm managing the post just fine." "That's precisely the problem," he replied smoothly. "You're working too hard. A woman alone shouldn't shoulder a burden like this." He gestured toward the shelves she stocked, the goods she negotiated for, the entire life she kept standing with her own hands. "You need rest." She stared at him, stunned. "Rest? I've arranged for 2 men to take over your duties for 6 months," he continued. "You'll return to your mother's ranch, effective Monday." The word struck like a slap. He was stripping away her father's legacy, her work, her pride, her reason for getting up each morning. "You had no right," she said, voice shaking. "I had every right," he snapped, the mask of kindness slipping. "This decision is final." He turned and left before she could speak again, the door chime ringing like a cruel laugh. Minerva stood frozen. Then her hands began to tremble. Her breath came shallow. The trading post smelled of her father's pipe smoke, of long nights and stubborn survival. Now it was slipping through her fingers. 3 days later, with 2 saddlebags and humiliation heavy in her chest, she rode toward her mother's ranch. The October sky stretched gray and endless above her, mirroring the hollow ache inside. When she reached the valley where cottonwoods lined the creek, the ranch looked smaller than memory had promised. Fences sagged, paint peeled, and the house leaned under the weight of years and unspoken worries. Her mother rushed out, wrapping her in an embrace that smelled of lavender soap and wood smoke, like childhood itself. Minerva let herself be held for a heartbeat before pulling away, already ashamed of needing it. "You look tired," her mother said gently. "You need rest." Everyone said it. Everyone thought they knew where she was weak. Inside, nothing had changed. Her father's rocking chair waited by the hearth. Old photographs lined the mantel. Her childhood quilt lay neatly on her bed. It should have soothed her. Instead, it made her chest ache. She heard voices outside and moved to the window. Her mother was speaking kindly to a teenage boy carrying water buckets. Edric Patterson, her mother explained later, the son of a widow renting the old foreman's cabin. The ranch needed labor, and the rent kept them afloat. Guilt burned hot in Minerva's gut. She should have been there. should have helped sooner. But she'd been drowning in Silver Ridge, and now she was drowning here too. Days crawled past. She paced the ranch, noticing every cracked board and broken hinge. Everything felt like it was coming apart, just like her. One afternoon, she snapped at the boy for spilling water on her boots, and the hurt in his eyes followed her long after he walked away. Her mother confronted her softly that night. "You're hurting," she said, "but you can't bleed on everyone around you." Minerva retreated to her room, staring at the ring she still couldn't remove. She wasn't resting. She was fading. On the 6th morning, she woke with a flicker of determination she hadn't felt in months. She dressed, took the wagon reins, and headed back toward Silver Ridge. She needed air. She needed to feel something besides shame. The town buzzed with wagons and voices. She stepped toward Morrison's general store and collided with someone exiting. Strong hands caught her arms. "You all right?" She looked up into blue eyes, sun-darkened skin, and a crooked smile loaded with 15 years of memory. "Minerva Hartwell," he said, grinning. "Didn't expect to nearly knock me over today." Her breath caught. "Lee Graver? Is that really you?" He was taller now, broader, carrying himself with an easy confidence. "I go by Lee," he said. "And you? You look different." "So do you," she managed. He laughed softly. "Good to see you again, Minnie." The old nickname struck deeper than she expected. Before she could reply, someone called his name across the street. He tipped his hat. "Don't be a stranger," he said. "We've got catching up to do." He walked away, leaving her heart racing. For the first time in years, she felt alive. The days that followed passed in an uneasy rhythm. She tried to settle into ranch life, but her thoughts kept drifting back to the man on Merchant Street. Lee Graver, the boy who dared her to climb cottonwoods, who teased her relentlessly, then stood up for her without hesitation. The boy who left at 16 and returned, as a man who unsettled her in ways she didn't understand. By Saturday, she found herself standing outside the Silver Ridge Community Church, telling herself she was there to volunteer for the Harvest Festival. She told herself it had nothing to do with Lee, even as her heart betrayed her. Inside the basement, chaos reigned. Crates, lanterns, lumber, mismatched cookware. A few volunteers worked near the wall, but Lee stood alone at the stairs, checking items off a list. He looked up and smiled slowly. "Well, I'll be. You actually came." "I said maybe," she replied, trying for firmness. "And maybe turned into yes," he said warmly. Together they worked for hours. She organized, labeled, brought order. He hauled crates, joked, and followed her lead without question. It felt easy, like slipping into a rhythm she'd forgotten. He teased memories out of her. And when she laughed, truly laughed, something softened in his eyes. "I missed that sound," he said quietly. The words lodged deep in her chest. By the time they finished, the basement was transformed, and the lamplight wrapped them in warmth. He walked her out into the fading evening. "I heard what Mortimer did," he said. "It was wrong." She murmured something about deserving it, about failing as a wife. He stopped her gently. "No," he said firmly. "You were enough. He was the one who failed." Tears stung her eyes. She whispered thanks and walked away before she broke. That was the beginning. She returned the following week, then again after that. And soon the rhythm of her days shifted without her quite realizing how. What began as helping with festival preparations turned into long afternoons sorting, lanterns and supplies beside, Lee and evenings that drifted into quiet walks, along the creek or hours on her mother's porch, talking until the stars crowded the sky. Silver Ridge noticed, of course. It always did. Whispers followed her through the streets and the church steps, but for the first time they didn't crush her spine. Something steadier held her upright now. Lee held her there not with force but with presence, with the simple way he listened as if every word mattered. One Thursday he took her to his uncle's pasture to help choose livestock for the upcoming auction. The sunset washed the land in gold, stretching shadows long and soft. He leaned against the fence, watching her with a grin that carried echoes of boyhood mischief. "Want to ride him?" he asked, nodding toward a tall bay gelding tossing its head. "You used to all the time." Before she could object, he lifted her easily into the saddle, then swung up behind her. his chest warm against her back as he gathered the reins. "Relax," he murmured near her ear. "I am," she lied. He laughed softly. "Liar," as the horse moved across the field. Her breath slowed without her noticing. Lee's hands rested steady over hers, his voice low and calm. "You're stronger than you think," he said. "And you're not broken. Not to me." The word settled deep, loosening something she had held tight for years. Later, as they walked back toward the barn, he stopped her. "Same time tomorrow?" he asked. He didn't rush her answer. When she finally said yes, his smile warmed something she hadn't known was cold. By Saturday, the day before the festival, they were loading a wagon when he challenged her with a grin. "Race you," she laughed. Protested they were grown adults now, but the spark was already lit. They tore down the dusty road, laughing like children, the wagon bouncing, her hair coming loose in the wind. She beat him by half a length. When she climbed down, her foot caught and she fell straight into his arms. They froze, her hands against his chest, his on her waist, their eyes locked. "Minnie," he breathed. "Don't call me that," she whispered, though she didn't pull away. His gaze dropped to her hand. "Why do you still wear the ring?" Her heart ached. "Because taking it off makes everything real." He brushed, his thumb gently along her hand. "You deserve better than the pain you're carrying. Let me show you." When he leaned in, he did it slowly, giving her every chance to refuse. She didn't. The kiss was soft, then deepened as years of loneliness cracked open. When they parted, breathless, he whispered, "Come with me tonight." Fear and hope twisted together in her chest. "Where?" "The cabin by the creek." A lifetime of caution told her to say no. Hope told her otherwise. She nodded. The abandoned cabin sat tucked among cottonwoods, hidden and quiet. When Lee lit the lamp, the glow softened the rough walls and the narrow bed. She hesitated, nerves shaking her resolve. He noticed immediately. "We don't have to stay," he said gently. "Say the word." She shook her head. "I don't want to go back." He approached slowly, cupped her face, his hands rough but careful. "Then I'm going to treat you the way you deserve," he murmured. "Because I want you. I always have." His sincerity stole her breath. The kiss that followed was unhurried, tender, filled with reverence. What came after was gentle and patient, nothing like the cold distance she remembered from her marriage. He learned her with care, whispering that she was beautiful, that she was whole. For the first time in years, she believed it. When they lay together afterward, tears slid down her temples. He lifted himself, worried. "Did I hurt you?" She laughed softly through tears. "No, you made me feel alive." Relief flooded his face. He kissed her forehead and held her close. "This isn't just tonight," he said. "I'm courting you properly from here on out." Her breath caught. Over the weeks that followed, rumors spread through Silver Ridge like wildfire. Minerva pretended not to hear them. But she walked differently now, shoulders straighter, eyes brighter. Lee came to the ranch each evening, officially to help with repairs, unofficially for her. Even her mother noticed. "You're happier," she said. "That boy sees you." Minerva didn't deny it. 5 weeks after the cabin, Lee invited her on a picnic by the river. They talked of small things until the smell of garlic. Sausage turned her stomach violently. Lee held her hair, worry etched into his face. "When was your last course?" he asked softly. The question tipped her world sideways. The next day, the doctor confirmed it. "You're with child," he said kindly. "Your body isn't broken." Outside, Lee waited, pacing. When she told him, joy burst from him like sunlight. He lifted her, laughing and crying all at once. 3 weeks later, beneath lanterns strung between cottonwoods, Lee knelt with a simple gold band. "Marry me," he said. "Let's build a life where no one makes you feel small." She said yes. They married in the small white chapel on the hill. Lee never left her side, not through whispers or years to come. Minerva, once called barren, held 8 children over 14 years, each one a testament to hope restored. And every night on their porch, watching their children run free, she teased him with a line that made him laugh and pull her close, both knowing the truth of the life they'd built together. The years passed gently, the seasons painting the valley in golds, whites, and deep greens. Minerva's days became full of work and laughter, chores and children, the rhythm of a life she had once thought impossible. Silver Ridge still whispered, but she no longer listened. She had Lee beside her, steady and unwavering, and that steadiness gave her the courage to hold her head high, to carry her own weight without apology. Even the trading post, now quiet in her absence, seemed to breathe easier knowing she had survived, thrived, and returned to a life that mattered. On a brisk spring morning, Minerva walked among her children as they chased the chickens across the yard, sunlight scattering across their hair like threads of gold. Lee worked at the fence, hammering nails into worn boards with sure, strong hands, and when he looked up, their eyes met, a private smile shared between them. Her mother, Philomena, tended the garden, humming softly to herself. Pride, woven into every motion. Life felt raw and real, but safe, anchored by love and resilience. Evenings brought quiet reflection. She and Lee would sit on the porch, sipping warm tea as the horizon burned with color. The laughter of children drifted from the field, a sound that had once seemed impossible for her to hear, and yet it was here, filling the air with proof that hope, once so fragile, could root itself deep and flourish. Minerva would run her fingers over the gold band on her hand, remembering the pain, the loss, the years spent in doubt, and she allowed herself a small, quiet smile. She had been strong enough to endure, wise enough to recognize the love she deserved, and brave enough to let it in. One afternoon, a letter arrived at the ranch bearing the Silver Ridge seal. It contained nothing of consequence, just a simple note. Your work, your courage, and your spirit have inspired many. The town wishes you continued happiness. Minerva folded the letter carefully, tucking it into her apron pocket. She didn't need the town's approval. She had Lee, her children, and the life they had built together. Approval, once sought from others, was no longer hers to give. As summer ripened, the children ran through fields of tall grass, their laughter carrying across the valley. Minerva watched from the porch, leaning against Lee as he wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "You see," he said softly, "they will know love because of you." Her heart swelled. "We all will," she whispered. And in that moment, the weight of her past, the trading post, Mortimer's harsh words, the empty years with Thomas, slipped further into shadow. She had survived them, and now her days were measured not in survival, but in joy. The fall harvest came, and with it, the community gathered once more for the festival she had helped. Organized that first week, she returned to Silver Ridge. This time, she wasn't merely volunteering. She was part of the town's heartbeat. She and Lee moved through the festivities, greeting friends and neighbors, their hands intertwined. Whispers followed them, but now she heard them as background music, not judgment. Her eyes met Lee's, and they shared a laugh, a secret conversation in a single glance. One cool October evening, the sky painted in bruised purples and golds. Lee led her to the cabin by the creek, the place of their first true intimacy and understanding. He lit the lamp, its glow soft against the rough walls, and she stepped inside, memory and present colliding in warmth and longing. "It's ours," he said, voice low. "Always was." She felt it then, the culmination of years of loneliness, fear and doubt, replaced with certainty and love. In that cabin they dreamed together, whispered promises that stretched into the night. They spoke of children, of the ranch, of life in a town that had once seemed cruel. Minerva allowed herself to dream without restraint, without fear, without the weight of judgment. She was seen. She was loved. She was whole. Lee kissed her forehead, pulling her close, and she realized the depth of the truth. She had found not only love, but a sanctuary in a world that had often seemed harsh and unforgiving. And in the quiet moments when the wind rustled the cottonwoods outside, she would press her hand over the gold band and whisper softly, "I knew I was fertile the night you went in deep and drained all my strength." Lee would laugh, pressing his lips to her temple. Best night of my life, and indeed it had been. For both of them, for the life they had built, the love they had reclaimed, and the hope that would forever grow with them, under the wide, endless sky of Silver Ridge. Years later, standing on the porch as the sun dipped low, Minerva watched her children play, Lee at her side. She let out a soft sigh of contentment. A lifetime of grief and longing finally settling into peace. The trading post, the whispers, the heartbreaks. They were all part of the story that had brought her here, to this life, to this love, to this joy. And every night, beneath stars that felt close enough to touch, she whispered into Lee's hair, and he kissed her forehead. Their hearts in perfect, quiet rhythm. This was the life she had fought for, the life she had earned, the life she would never let go.